Steve, you're muted.
Steve. Our speaker this evening is Ambaree Majumder from Singapore. She's a plant-based influencer and the founder of Vegan Kino. And you can see, as I said in the chat there, that we had a vegan dinner this evening for carry out in Ambaree's honor. It was very, very good. She has a career as an IT business analyst, but for the past few years has been spending most of her time giving talks and conducting workshops about how leading a plant-based lifestyle can benefit human health, the planet, and our fellow Earthlings. Ambaree is the co-leader of the Southeast Asia Regional Chapter of the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group. And it's through the Rotary Action Group that Ambaree and I got to know each other. And she's a social entrepreneur, and she's certified in food sustainability and plant-based nutrition from eCornell. Using social media and other platforms, she reaches out to people who are curious about the science and art about eating a plant-based diet. She has two beautiful children, ages 9 and 3, who she is raising vegan. And so welcome, Ambaree, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. And I also see that my team members from the Plant-Rich Diet Task Force, the co-chair of the team, Scott, and my friend Dawn is also here. Dawn is from Canada. I will just... So thank you once again for inviting me to your club meeting today. And my name is Ambaree, and thank you again to Steve for including me in your club meeting today. My presentation for today is called Our Plate and the Planet. And as the name suggests, we will be looking at really why is it so important to be aware of what we choose to eat on a daily basis in the context of the well-being of our planet, and to what extent is our plate intertwined with the future and also the present of our planet. So if we look at global warming, we notice that it is not just one isolated problem, but it is the result of a combination of many complex, interconnected natural systems that seem to have fallen out of balance. Each of these problems, as you can see here, influence one another and collectively contribute to climate change on different dimensions and to different degrees. So let me introduce you to that economic sector that has a major role to play in all of these concern areas that add to climate change. And that is industrialized agriculture. According to a report by Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, created by the United Nations, this is that sector which exigently influences various parameters that are directly contributing to climate change, as you can see here. So whether it is greenhouse gas emissions, water pollution, soil degradation, wildlife extinction, habitat loss, marine ecosystem disruptions, the one common factor that plays a significant role in all of these systems to fall out of balance, to fall out of their natural balance, is our unsustainable food systems. The problem with our current food system is that when food production was being industrialized like decades ago, the majority of the agricultural practices were designed to produce crops and livestock for a much smaller population to start with. They had a one-point agenda at that time to maximize profitability and productivity through commodification and appropriation. There was absolutely no environmental obligation attached to those methods. So chemicals and machinery were indiscriminately employed without much foresightedness of the well-being of the planet, because at that time there was actually no problem of climate change or global warming. However, now there are many, many more people in this world, and our natural resources are being stretched thin because of a high demand for certain foods. So here are some of the commonly produced foods that we eat in high or moderate quantities on a daily basis. Now, to start with, we should know that industrial scale food production by itself is a significant contributor to climate change and is responsible for 1/4 of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Some foods generate way more greenhouse gases and use up significantly more natural resources than others. We will quickly take a look at a few visuals to get an idea about really which foods are causing the maximum and the minimum environmental disruptions. So this is a general representation of the kind of impact the production of 100 grams of protein has on the planet. It is clear that almost all of the food that is derived from the livestock industry lies in the 90th percentile impact spectrum. The amount of carbon emissions and land use caused by animal sourced proteins is strikingly larger than the plant protein sources. Products like beef, lamb, mutton, cheese, pork, in comparison to peas and legumes, and cow's milk in comparison to any plant milk, for example, oat milk or soy milk, require way more resources to be produced, processed, packaged, and finally transported. And unfortunately, it does not end there. The post-production environmental cost of animal-based proteins lingers way after the products have been consumed, which are seen in the form of acidification and eutrophication. So aggravated acidification and eutrophication, as some of you might know, are processes that are responsible for incredible terrestrial as well as marine ecosystem disruption. This is another study done by Pure and Nemesek that gives us an idea about the greenhouse gas emissions associated with different food products. As you might know, the three main greenhouse gases that are emitted by the agriculture sector are firstly carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. But which products are producing the maximum emissions is the question. The most obvious thing that you can see here is the difference in how much emissions is caused by the animal sourced products as opposed to plants. Even if you look at the lowest carbon emitting meat like poultry, even that causes more than 5 times carbon emissions than, let's say, a plant protein like pulses or legumes. According to the Long Shadow report by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the livestock industry produces 7.1 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year, which is 14.5% of all the greenhouse gas emissions from human activity. And this is a very conservative number. In general, according to ResearchGate, farm-based meat production contributes 4 times more to the total greenhouse gas emissions than plants. The main reason why food coming from ruminants, which basically include our cattle and sheep that produce meat and dairy for us, cause such excessive emissions is because they produce the gas of methane, which is 21 times more potent than carbon dioxide weight-wise, and 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide in terms of for how long they can be in our atmosphere. The average ruminant produces 250 to 500 liters of methane every single day. In the same context, I'd like to bring your attention to the latest report, one of the latest reports that the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change under United Nations released on the 9th of August last year. This is one of the most advanced climate reports that highlights the dire state of the current climate situation and why time is running out faster than it was predicted in earlier times. What stands out in this assessment report 6 is the starkest warning yet by scientists about the absolute urgency with which we need to substantially bring down the global methane emissions if we want to halt the speed with which we are rushing to a climate catastrophe. The report says with high confidence that limiting global warming to close to 1.5 degrees Celsius or even 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels will be beyond reach in the next 2 decades without immediate, rapid, and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. And we have to start thinking about methane. Here are some of the snapshots of the media articles which were published soon after this report was released. And this is a snapshot of another relatively recent report by the United Nations Environment Programme, which clearly mentions that agriculture is the predominant source of methane, and 32%, that is almost 1/3 of the global methane emissions, are caused by livestock alone. This is a number that I believe cannot be ignored and should not be ignored if we are genuinely concerned about reducing methane emissions or to halve or delay climate change. Now, let's talk a little bit about water. Here, this is a graph that shows the water footprint of some of the foods that we just discussed. And this is a report by the World Resources Institute. Here as well, the foods that are lined high up are those that come from livestock. And it takes, for example, it takes 47 times more water to produce 1 kilo or 1 kg of beef as compared to 1 kg of vegetables. The difference is clear and probably demands our attention. Growing animal feed for raising billions of livestock requires enormous quantities of water in comparison to plant foods. For example, again, to grow 1 pound of chicken, it takes more than 500 gallons of water. In general, the thumb rule has been that the lower you eat in the food chain, the less water intensive or resource intensive in general your food is going to be. So having spoken about water and carbon footprints, I'd like to speak a little bit about the land footprint and the biomass distribution of land mammals, because I feel that a lot of eventualities can be addressed if we address this. So we have limited land on our planet, we know that. Currently, it is widely distributed amongst human population, farmed animals, and wild animals. But with an exponential growth in the number of farmed animals on our planet, space for wildlife is shrinking every single day. The reason for that is a skyrocketing demand for meat, dairy, eggs, and fish from around the world, because of which forests, including rainforests and precious mangroves, are being indiscriminately cleared. Thousands of miles of forests everywhere are being destroyed to make space for growing animal feed or for cattle ranching. And this is the main reason why more than half of the land mammal biomass comprises of farmed animals right now, and less than 5% is comprised of wildlife. According to researchers from Oxford, meat, dairy, eggs, and fish farming use 83% of world's agricultural land, yet provide only 18% of the world's calories. If you look at the image with the red and green colors, you will know that we are spending massive quantities of energy and natural resources, especially land, to produce a very tiny quantity of food. This is very expensive, inefficient, and it is a poor way of producing food. And with a soaring demand for animal products, now it has become destructive in nature. The role of Amazon, or any other rainforest for that matter, what the kind of role that they play in maintaining or sustaining life on Earth is something that we all are aware of. According to an article by WWF, cattle ranching ranks first in causing deforestation in the Amazon rainforests. This obviously snowballs into other natural reactions like erratic weather conditions like droughts and floods, natural habitat loss, wild flora and fauna extinction, and ecosystem disruptions. And some of these problems are unfortunately have gone to a stage of irreversibility. Now we come to that problem, which is one of the most profound reasons why livestock is even being discussed everywhere, and that is animal feed. Although there are several issues with this, like before industrialization, for example, farmers would grow food for the animals around the same farm or nearby farms where livestock would be. So there was no need for animal feeds to be transported from one place to another. However, now food for livestock is grown in USA and Brazil and shipped to China, for example. And this practice has a massive environmental cost associated with the animal agriculture sector. Another problem with animal feed is that due to an incredibly high demand from around the world, millions of tons of soy and maize are grown in a monoculture fashion, which has various primary and secondary detrimental environmental effects, like inefficient carbon sequestration, topsoil fertility loss, increased chemical toxicity in soil, etc. Also, the lack of diversity in these vegetations, monocrop vegetations, destroys natural predator and prey relationships, leading to species loss of precious insects like beetles and aphids. In the next two slides, I will be touching upon the inefficient calorie conversion and the problem of animal feed versus human food. So the pressing point about animal feed is how animals are fundamentally inefficient at processing their feed into foods that humans can eat. Chicken is a good example. It takes 9 calories of feed crops to that may contain, soy or corn to get 1 calorie in the form of meat. And that's after decades of breeding, optimizing chickens, and minimizing their movement to conserve their energy. That represents about 90% food waste before reaching any form of further processing or getting anywhere close to the consumer. And because of that inherent inefficiency, we need to use up 9 times as much resources like land, fertilizers, and water while adding up greenhouse gas emissions at every stage of the process. The numbers for chicken actually pale in comparison to other types of animal products like beef, dairy, or lamb. The last problem is the proportion of the global crop growth which humans eat versus what is grown to feed animals, farm animals. As you can see here, more than 35% of the global crop production is used for livestock. So we might want to take note that there is a huge angle of sustainability here. Today, the world produces enough grains to feed all human beings and even more. But a major portion of these grains are being fed to the 70 billion farmed animals every single year, while 8 million people are sleeping hungry every night. Actually, we could, if you see these numbers, we could easily have a well-fed world, only if we could use the crops that we grow for people rather than growing animals which can be eaten by a small section of our society. So things are going to get worse, unfortunately, when 2 billion more people will need to be fed by 2050. With our natural resources being already stretched thin, it will almost be impossible to support a skyrocketing demand for meat, dairy, eggs, and fish within the affluent societies and 2 billion additional mouths to be fed around the world. It will only mean more hunger, malnutrition, and food injustice. I want to make a special mention about the commercial fishing and the seafood consumption figures because this area often gets forgotten. And that despite the United Nations estimating that up to 95% of the global ocean damage is a direct result of bottom trawling. So what is bottom trawling? Bottom trawling basically takes place when fishing boats drag giant nets across the ocean floor to scrape up fish and a staggering amount of marine life, including sea turtles, dolphins, coral reef, basically anything else in their path, wreaking havoc on delicate ecosystems and ocean habitats, and then discarding them either dead or dying. These non-target victims are called bycatches. And secondly, industrial fishing breeds and raises many predator fish like salmon, and billions of small wild fish need to be caught to feed all the farmed fish, giving rise to an aggressive cycle of excessive fishing. According to proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, it takes 5 pounds of small ocean fish to produce just 1 pound of farmed salmon. So here as well, you see a tremendous inefficiency in calorie conversion, like we saw in land livestock. And lastly, one of the most compelling reasons is that of the abandoned fishing nets and gears called ghost nets. So there are thousands of meters of fishing nets that are abandoned or lost in the ocean waters every year by the fishing industry. Protected animals like dolphins and turtles, sea lions get entangled and injured by these nets and hooks, and they eventually either die of asphyxiation or starvation. This is a sea turtle who was found in this state, entangled in fishing nets by an underwater photographer in 2019 around Barcelona. So our oceans are in big trouble. I think we all know that. But because one of the contributing factors to that is the figures of seafood consumption, because the average person now eats almost twice as much seafood as they did 50 years ago. It is estimated that we are pulling over 1 trillion fish out of our oceans every single year, and 94% of our ocean fisheries are now overfished or maximally fished. So after having spoken about the many issues with our animal agriculture sector, I'd like to show a plausible solution that each one of us can implement to target most of these troubled areas. And I'm not asking you to go vegetarian or vegan. So let me set that record straight, because many people get very scared that I'm going to say something that they wouldn't like. I'm not a diet police telling people what they should be eating, but I'm here to make you aware of the hidden environmental cost of modern food. Although the statistics that I presented might seem overwhelming at the first glance, I would like to tell you that being a consumer in today's world is a position of amazing power. All we need to do is to collectively shift the demand for animal products to some extent by taking a personal responsibility to make sure that whenever we can, we eat a diet that is rich in plants, which is called a plant-rich meal. What is a plant-rich meal? A plant-rich meal is rich in whole grains, legumes, fruits and vegetables, and minimal or less in foods that come from livestock like meat, dairy, eggs, fish, and seafood, because they use up the maximum amount of natural resources. The way we grow and consume food can have an immediate positive impact almost in all the dimensions that are causing climate change, as I mentioned earlier. Modifying our consumption patterns, which is a demand side solution, would not require any technological innovations. It totally would depend on what we choose to eat on a daily basis or a meal basis. Other important and long-term changes, like, let's say, modifying our electrical grids to use cleaner forms of energies, would need years of research, programming, testing, and implementations, whereas eating a plant-rich meal whenever possible can be done immediately and can give us the necessary time to look for solutions to other problems like fossil fuels in the long run. According to World Resources Institute, reducing consumption of animal-based foods among the world's wealthier populations could free up significant amounts of land, possibly enabling the world to feed 10 billion people in 2050 without agriculture further expanding into our forests. Now, there are several hundreds of scientific reports and meta-analysis of scientific reports that are available online for all of us to read. But I want to show you one of the latest ones. This is a snapshot of an article that was written based on a climate report published by the United Nations that was released in February this year. There is nothing muddled about the mention that a gradual phasing out of animal agriculture and people shifting to a plant-based diet or a plant-rich diet can be a very easy yet one of the most promising environmental solutions to mitigate the risks of climate change. It is clearly calling for a worldwide reduction of our dependency on animal agriculture, because that one step can effectively halt the greenhouse gas emissions for the next 30 years, which cannot be achieved by any other known climate solution. So what is it that you and I can do? What can we do next? Where can we start? Here are some of the relatively easy dietary changes that can yield big environmental results. For example, you can go meatless, or you can eat plant-based. You can just eat plant-based meals all throughout one day a week, or multiple days in a week. Or you can make just one meal a day 100% plant-based. Or you can swap out cow's milk for a non-dairy milk like soy or oat. Or simply eat a plant-rich or a plant-based diet whenever you can. According to the Center for Nutrition Studies, even if 38%, less than half of the US population gave up eating meat even once a week, it would be equivalent to 1.6 million cars off the road for one whole year. I did some calculations and got something interesting. So in context, there are about 700,000 Tesla cars sold in a year. If most of the population in the US gave up animal products one day a week, then the environmental impact of that will be equivalent to taking 5 million cars off the road, which is equal to 7 years of Tesla sales. So the point I'm trying to make is that what we eat really needs addressing as much as which car we drive, if not more, when we are talking about global warming or climate change. Our plates might be more connected to the planet than we ever thought before. Every single meal matters, and every time we sit down to eat can be an opportunity for us to help in freeing up precious natural resources in significant numbers, as you can see here. If not a plant-based meal, then even if it is a plant-rich meal, which is great, with more plants in it and less animal products, even then, consistent small consumption changes can potentially give us large environmental benefits. Another very good reason to minimize the intake of animal based products is that nutritional science has proven it without a doubt that eating a well balanced plant based diet can meet all our nutritional requirements. In fact, eating a diet rich in plants have been shown to prevent and reverse several chronic and lifestyle diseases as well, like diabetes and hypertension, and also certain cancers. This is my last slide. And after having spoken of the many reasons why eating a plant based meal as many times as you possibly can is a powerful, positive step towards sustainability, before I end, I want to bust a myth around the taste of plant based foods. It is often presumed that vegan food or plant based food equates to boiled vegetables or raw lettuce salads, which is totally untrue. Plant-based food is just like any other food. If you cook it well with the right flavors and ingredients, they can look and taste very enticing and super delicious, as you can see them here. Eating these beautiful dishes are the best that we can do for our planet on a daily basis and for our own health. And with that, I will stop sharing my slides, and I am happy to answer any of your questions.
Great, thank you so much. So if you have a question, you can type it into the chat or unmute yourself. I guess I can start with a question, kind of a comment and then a question. At the climate reality training that I was at in 2009, one of the presenters was talking about this and made a very bold statement, and you could tell people in the crowd were like, whoa. And he basically said that it's gotten to the point where we're at based off of the climate and the intense production for the foods that we're eating, that you can't call yourself an environmentalist and eat meat anymore. You know, people were like, ugh. So what has been your response as you've done these presentations for communities around the world? Are you finding that people are resistant to give up their meat, or are people, do you feel like, kind of starting to get it?
I think no, there's no. I haven't faced any resistance. I've faced curiosity, because which I think is very positive. And the whole point of me giving these presentations, or any of my team members from the Plant Rich Diet talking about this subject, is to really make people think. As I said, during my presentation, that I'm not here to really tell anybody what they should be eating. I hardly tell my kids what they should be eating. I have just, made out a little set of instructions, and they are just supposed to follow them. But to answer your question, this is a very common statement that if you're a meat eating environmentalist, then you are no environmentalist. You are either a meat eater or an environmentalist. It's a very common thing, but I think that because we are a part of a system, it takes us time to really make such big changes, right? Some people are able to do it overnight, but some people take a long time. They really have to make themselves aware of the impact each of their actions have. So I haven't really faced any resistance. No, I wouldn't call them resistance at all. But they've people have been very, very forthcoming, and they have told me amazing things like, okay, what are the baby steps that I can take? And, we've guided them through easy things that they can do. They might look easy, and you might assume that they have no environmental impact. But basically, we were just trying to tell them that if you do these small steps consistently for a long period of time, then there are amazing environmental benefits. So there hasn't really been any resistance, but I would say that people have been really receptive to the science. And I hope after they hear these, they listen to all of these statistics, they go back and research and find out for themselves what is best for themselves.
Thank you. What other questions do we have?
Please ask me a question so that I know that I've made a difference.
I don't see any in the chat quite yet.
Well, I have a question because I actually get asked this question a lot. I'm mostly vegan, but a lot of people ask me, how do I get my iron and my B vitamins? And they're like, how can you do that being a vegan? So what do you know about this, Ambaree, and what can you say about the nutrition aspect of a vegan diet?
So vitamin B12 is a nutrient that vegans and actually vegetarians and a lot of like meat eaters also have to supplement in their diets. And depending upon which part of the world you are, vitamin D also might need to be supplemented. Although this place is sunny all the time, but still there are people who are vitamin D deficient. So you might need to supplement your these two vitamins. Iron, if you are eating a well-balanced plant-based diet, which basically simply means that you're eating enough calories that is comprised of whole grains, legumes, different types of legumes, fresh vegetables and fresh fruits with small quantities of nuts and seeds, then all other nutrients, you will be able to receive all other nutrients in optimum quantities that are needed for your system, for your body to function without any issues. So of course, if being vegan also, like at one point when I was much younger, I used to eat all processed. I mean, I thought I was living on French fries and Coke. I was vegan at that time too, but of course, over a period of time, like maybe about a year or two, I started not feeling all right. And then I knew what I was doing actually. So I just quietly changed my diet and, went back to eating a balanced plant-based diet. So really, if you're eating a well-balanced plant-based diet, then you should not be having issues with any nutrient deficiency, except for the two that I mentioned, vitamin B12 and D, depending upon how long you are out in the sun.
Okay, thank you.
And I do see, Kathy, I see that you have your hand raised. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, actually, this is Mike, but is there any studies that show the trends of meat eaters versus vegetarians versus vegans? Not necessarily a worldwide study, but within certain countries. What's going on? Are we seeing the number of meat eaters dropping and the plant-based eaters going up? What are the trends?
The trends are that there are a lot of flexitarians in the world now, meaning people are not very rigid about what they eat anymore. And there is definitely a rise in the way, in the amount of plant-based options people include in their diets now. And studies, I cannot recall the name of the institutions who are doing it, but then there are many statistics actually. Even if you go online, there's a lot of meat alternatives that are coming up, which kind of says that there's business happening. Singapore happens to be one of the hubs for plant-based meat alternatives. And so the answer to your question is that it's definitely going towards plant-based eating. But I would say that we are talking about 8 billion versus few thousands as of now, but it's growing. And there is definitely a lot of scope for improvement, but then it's definitely going towards the right direction. My friend Scott has raised his hand.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, Scott, before your question, that I've definitely, in the years of eating more vegan, seen not only an increase in the different food products, but they are tasting better too, which is as the demand goes up, like that's an amazing thing. It's like there's actually like vegan cheeses that you can just eat on your own now. It's really good. So
Yeah.
sorry, Scott, go ahead with your question.
And I just want to share one very personal story. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and an autoimmune disease called the Hashimoto's autoimmune disease. Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This happened in 2010 or 11, sometime at that time. And I was on medication, not for the autoimmune disease, but for hypothyroidism, which basically was a manifestation of the autoimmune disease. So I was on medication for about 4, 5, 6 years, I think. And then when I went plant-based, the reason why I went plant-based was completely ethical, but then it kind of boosted my movement towards this lifestyle even further when I heard about Vanessa Williams. Sorry, who's the other sister? What's her name? She inspired me. I'm so sad. I forgot her name.
Serena Williams?
No, so Venus Williams, not Serena. I was thinking it was Vanessa. Venus Williams. That's such a shame that I forgot her name. So, but anyway, I haven't mentioned her for a long time. So Venus Williams has fought her autoimmune disease on a plant-based diet. So I had an autoimmune disease. I thought, how different can one autoimmune disease be from another? Let me try a plant-based diet and see what happens to my autoimmune disease. So what happened is that I think about within a couple of months, I kind of was taken off of medication for my hypothyroidism. My autoimmune disease, I still have it, but it's way within my control. And that has I'm not on any medication. I've had pregnancy after that, and everything has been amazing. So yeah, that's one personal story that I wanted to share about health.
Yeah, and there's some other folks sharing in the chat too, just similar experiences of the health benefits of adopting a more plant-based diet. Chris, I see you have your hand up. Chris Stein, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you for the great presentation. You gave us some amazing statistics. The statistics alone make one want to act. And I don't have any real question for you, just to commend you for this presentation and for speaking to clubs and other groups about this. But I don't think any of your, like for me, I love meat, and I doubt I could probably, go cold turkey or anything on it. But I don't think any of your asks were unreasonable. And, I took a photo of that, and I will take action based on your presentation. So I don't think it's unreasonable, anything that you asked, and it does have large impacts. So thank you. I'm so glad I was able to attend tonight's presentation and hear you speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. I'm just so touched that you took a photo of my slide.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. And yeah, every little step. Actually, they might be little for us, but if you, as I was saying, if you do it as consistently, it's like I call it like the yoga. You do yoga, you get in. It's some pose. So it really doesn't, on the first day you don't have to do it, but then if you consistently do it for a long period of time, you are actually benefiting your health immensely. So it's just the same principle. If you consistently do it, a small thing every single day or every week or even every month, even then it's going to have a massive environmental benefit, which is what is the need of the hour right now. Thank you so much, Chris.
Do we have any other questions? I'm not seeing any right now.
Giants.
I can add one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, Ambaree, always love listening to you. She teaches us so much. I got involved with the task force because of my love of cooking of plant-based foods. Didn't know as much about the environmental impact at the time, and I'm learning so much from the team. But we have a little cookbook that may be coming out, an ebook soon. So keep your eyes posted, and we're happy to share that. And we hope to make it a living document that we can put stuff in, but all Rotarians can add to, that it's a resource for people to be able to take the steps to have like tested, delicious recipes that are a way to step into some of this way of eating and, to help the planet. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely share that. If we can get the cookbook info, that would be great. We can pass that around and maybe collect some recipes from our own members as well. I know I've got a award-winning chili recipe that uses plant-based meats that won without my family even knowing that it was not real ground beef. So I felt a little sneaky there, but that's kind of fun. So yeah, that would be great. But Ambaree, thank you so much for joining us. This has been fantastic. And before we wrap up for the night, I just want to give you the opportunity for any last closing comments.
So I'll just add to what Dawn said. Thank you so much, Dawn, for mentioning about our cookbook. A great amount of work has gone into creating that ebook. The only thing is that actually the book is ready. We have starters, main courses, snacks, and desserts. The only thing is that we need to reproduce those pictures. We have the copyright for pictures and all of that. So we have to reproduce those recipes, which me and Dawn have taken up the task of doing. We will create them at home and take photos and modify those recipes a little bit and ready them. So we are very excited. Most probably the book will be, I don't know if it's already up, but it will be there on the ESRAG website. So you will be able to download it and use it the way you like. We want to make it a living document and invite people to provide their recipes as well. But that is for stage 2. Right now we are going to just make sure that our book is ready. Closing comments apart from that would be that please reach out to me. I will so even outside of Rotary, this is what I do. So that's my email ID. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or anything. This is what I do all the time. So if you are struggling with something, then please ask me. That's my email ID, or I'm also available on WhatsApp. Just that if you are messaging me at 4 p.m., just know that I'm sleeping. As soon as I wake up, I'll reply. I'm not ignoring you. I'll never ignore you if you have a question. Yeah, that's all. Yes, please go ahead, Scott. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we might repeat this challenge this year too. Last year was like our pilot. We were like experimenting and trying to. So we had 580 plus people who subscribed to that challenge, registered for the challenge, and we hope to do it again this year. And I hope to see all of you at the challenge. Although it's called a challenge, it's not a challenge at all. It's just just one email that you'll get every day about some facts, recipes, and invitation to attend the talks, which would be given by experts from this field, whether it is about the health or the environment, and our diet, how our diet impacts both of them. So I think so. It's a good idea to repeat the challenge. Yes, I think so. I think we'll do it. Yeah.
Great. Well, we will look out for that and we can promote that to the group. So thank you again for taking the time.
Thank
We really
you.
appreciate this. Was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, Steve.